Real quick, before we get into the show, I wanted to share a new service called Getita that Ken and I have been using that has made us over $10,000 in Amazon reimbursements. The service requires no monthly subscription, and Getita collects a small percentage of the money they recover for you. It takes less than 5 minutes to set up and works on all Amazon marketplaces. Go to Getita.com, Getida, and enter promo code FTM400. That's FTM for Firing the Man 400 to get your first $400 in reimbursements commission free. How much money does Amazon owe you?
Welcome everyone to the Firing the Man podcast, a show for anyone who wants to be their own boss. If you sit in a cubicle every day and know you are capable of more, then join us. This show will help you build a business and grow your passive income streams in just a few short hours per day. And now your hosts, serial entrepreneurs David Schomer and Ken Wilson.
Welcome everyone to the Firing the Man podcast. On today's episode, we are joined by Chris Anderson, the founder and CEO of Elevate Media, a full-service podcast production agency for 6- and 7-figure business owners. In 2020, Chris fired the man to build a life he loved and has been able to do just that since. Chris and his team help these businesses elevate through video podcasting. They help these businesses launch, produce, and grow their podcasts into top 10% and higher globally without all the extra work. He has worked on projects in tandem with Fortune 500 companies such as Apple, Amazon, Bose, Rolls-Royce, and many more. He is also the host of Elevate Media, a top 2% globally listened to show. Welcome to the show, Chris.
Thanks for having me, guys. Super excited to be here and have a conversation with you.
Absolutely. So to start things off, can you get us up to speed on your path to starting Elevate Media?
Yeah, how long do you want me to go? No, it could be a very long story, but I'll try to keep it brief. Basically, back in 2020, there were a lot of things that led up to the moment of me quitting my job to start pursuing entrepreneurship. Lost a lot of loved ones in a short amount of time. COVID would kind of start to trickle it in the world, and just saw the frailty of life and the brevity of life. And I just got to the point where I got tired of someone else telling me what my time was worth and where my time could go. I'd been listening to a lot of, individuals in the world of personal development, business development, entrepreneurship, and I saw the possibility. I knew that there's something out there I could do to build a life I wanted, build a life I loved, and dictate my own time. And so April 2020, COVID hit in Indiana, and at the same time, I decided to quit my job. I actually gave them 4 weeks notice, which was April. Halfway through that, I got furloughed and sent home because of COVID. And so my journey started right there. And, if you're seeing the video, if not, you can edit that out. But Ken has a poster behind him, and it says, "Burn the boats." And "Burn the boats" was kind of my motto. I had read a book, and I want to say it, McGregor was his last name, and I can't remember, but "The Last Arrow" was what the title of the book was called. And in there, he told the story of, the general who told his people, "Hey, we're going to this island, we're going to fight, but we're burning the boats when we get there because it's either win or die, and there's no turning back." And so that was kind of my motto. I'm burning the boats, I'm going after this. I felt led to do it, and not going to look back. I'm going to take it one step at a time. And so that's I kind of jumped into it. I don't necessarily tell people to do that. It's not really the easiest thing. Entrepreneurship's already hard. And so when you quit your job cold turkey with no money coming in from anything, with no business background, it's not for the faint of heart. And so did that. And I'd had my podcast going since 2019. It was a different name previously. And I was just learning from entrepreneurs. I was inviting successful entrepreneurs on the show, learning from them and then sharing with other people. And so now in 2020, I was like, oh yeah, okay, I've learned enough. I'm going to help other people grow their business. And the problem is I hadn't done it yet. And so there was just that misalignment. I think internally, I didn't really want to sell that because I knew that I hadn't done it. And so there was kind of that battle because I'd seen so many other successful entrepreneurs doing that. And I was like, okay, that's where I should head towards. So I went through 2020, our savings was dwindling. My wife's just a teacher, so she's not making a whole lot. 2021 comes around and I have people start asking me, hey, how's your podcast growing? How are you becoming successful at it? All these different questions, technical questions, how do you find guests, all the things. How do you start a podcast? And so I kind of was like, hey, well, I need some money coming in. So I leaned into that a little bit and started taking on clients on how to do that, how to launch a podcast successfully. And, that was doing well, but I still wanted to do, the original idea I had. And it got to the end of 2021 where we were kind of at that road, that T in the road where you have to decide. And I kept getting these questions and people coming about podcasts, and my ego and my pride said, no, like, I don't want to do that. I want to, do this thing and you'll figure it out eventually. It took me, a little bit to just sit and be still and quiet and kind of listen. And I heard, like, get out of the way, move yourself out of the way and look what's being given to you. Like, look what path is opening up if you would just take it. And so the end of 2021, I think it was October, ended up doing a DBA, doing business as, created Elevate Media Group, and really went full into that. And the next month, I think it was the next month or the same month that we did that, got my first reoccurring monthly client, and it just has been growing since. And yeah, so that's kind of a condensed, quick version, if you can believe it.
No, absolutely. And thanks for sharing your story. It's pretty amazing. I love hearing stories like that. It's why we love doing this podcast, Firing the Man. And so if we can take a few steps back, David and I always get this question from listeners is like, what was quitting your job like with no revenue, did you have a plan? Did you burn the boats without a plan? Like, what does that look like for the listeners that are contemplating this or thinking about, doing that in the future?
Yeah, it was definitely a burn the boats kind of thing. I had an idea, but the idea was the original idea that I wasn't prepared for, that I hadn't had the experience of doing. And so we really just, my wife and I, so faith is a big part of my story and just my life. And it was previous to quitting my job where I brought the idea to her. And she's a math teacher, very analytical. And she said, yeah, no, no way that's going to happen. She said, A plus B equals C. So you see C down here, but where's A and B? I got to see those two. And I said, okay, I get it. No problem. Like, I was like, if this is what we're supposed to do, if this is what God wants us to do, you'll be on board, because that's what I believe. I believe he'll keep us on the same page with that. So eventually she did. And that's what led to me quitting my job. And there wasn't a real plan. The plan was figured out as we go, kind of the Indiana Jones Last Crusade. I don't know, making this up as I go. Cool. Just winging it. And again, just taking everything I've learned from the guests I had previously on the show, from those I was listening to on other podcasts, and really just nose down to the grindstone trying to figure it out. So there was really no plan. Just burn those boats and figure it out as fast as you can.
Okay. Awesome. I like that. I think so your risk tolerance is very, very high. No, I think it's great. It sounds like you had a backup plan and everything, but you went all in. And so sometimes that it kind of closes off that little voice in the head of like, are you really going to do this? Are you not? Like, when you go all in, there is no voice back there saying, no, it's like you have one option, it's forward. Mm-hmm. And so I really like that.
Yeah. That's kind of like, sorry to jump in there, but that's kind of like how I approach a lot of things. Like my wife, we were talking about the other day, and I kind of thought about it, and, I run marathons, and I have previously, at least, this is 2023 right now, we'll see the future, but previously I would run marathons with like little to no training, just go out and run. And, I've been a runner all my life and things like that and been in decent shape, but 26.2 miles, I was just like, yeah, I'll sign up for this race. And race day came around, and I said, well, as long as I finish, as long as I cross the finish line, that's all that matters. Like, I'm not going out to try to beat everybody and, be first or anything like that. I just want to finish and do my best. And that's kind of has become now like a mental challenge, a physical challenge that I push myself to. I'm doing one this coming October. And I think I signed up like 3 months ago, and I ran like twice since I've signed up, but we'll see how much more I run till then. But yeah, I think it's just kind of my nature for sure. And I've learned, and the big thing is like, I've learned that, but I've also learned how to make a little bit better calculated risks along the way. Cause I've taken some risks that have, come back to bite me or, haven't been the best outcome, but I've learned from them and moved on. Whereas my wife is very anti-risk tolerant, and she wants to, have the exact plan. And so we kind of balance each other in that way. But yeah.
That's awesome. It sounds like you deliver under pressure.
Yeah, try to, at least most of the time.
Awesome.
I know there's a lot of people listening to this show that are probably still working a full-time job, and it's on their mind. I want to fire the man. I want to do my own thing. So my question to you is, what advice would you give to them, or what advice would you give to yourself if you could do it all over again?
Yeah, I'd probably say stay in my job a little bit longer if I could. No, make sure if you are going to quit your job, if that's the step you're going to take, make sure you have some sort of savings. We had some, and again, we it's crazy story, but like we burnt through it on what we needed to and got to the point where we had to make money. And that's kind of when Elevate happened. It all just happened at once. But yeah, that's a hard one, because you've got to know when to burn the boats. You got to know when to take that leap. Because I know people who are successful in their businesses that still have a 9-to-5. You're battling that time commitment between the two. So you've got to know when, if you have bigger goals, when is it time to cut ties with that 9-to-5 and go all in on your business to get that next level? Because you only have so much time, your job, that 9-to-5 takes a lot of it. You could do so much more without it. But if you're just starting out and you're not at that point, I would just say, just continue to grind, continue to hone in your message of your business or your brand or what you're who you're helping with the product you have, and just narrow that in and get it as lean, as simple as possible, and just get reps until you're at a certain threshold that you feel comfortable being able to step away from that 9-to-5.
Yeah, I like that. So Chris, podcasting, let's get into podcasting a bit. So we got audio podcasting, video podcasting, and I know you're an expert in these. What are your thoughts of audio versus video? What's the future look like? What should people be focusing on?
Yeah, for sure. So video podcast is what you should be focusing on if you're going to spend any time doing it. And that's because where we are right now with social media, with online presence, with now AI that you have to start competing against, because you can do an AI avatar and AI voice. Video is going to cut through a lot of that, because eventually people are going to want people and not avatars. It's going to be a different connection. Prior, where we are right now, video sets you apart from all the just video or just all the audio only shows. And you're able to connect better online, on social media with video, because people are going to be able to see your mannerisms. They're going to be able to see your face as they hear your voice, which just builds a better connection a little bit easier than if they were just to hear you speaking. So it's a great marketing tool. It's a great connection. It's a great audience builder. It's a great community builder, which is the video, because of that bridge you can kind of gap. Even though you're not in person, they can at least still see you and pick up on things that way. So video is definitely the priority.
Very nice. Now, to somebody who's listening that may only be recording audio, what's step one to get them into video? Like what would be a logical first step?
Yeah, for sure. The first step, make sure your audio is on target. Obviously, you want to have the best audio. So if you haven't got that yet, that'd be the first thing to focus on. Because even if you have video and your audio quality is not very good, it's gonna turn people away still. So that's where you want to really start. But once you have that audio down, you've invested in a decent mic that's going to sound good. The next step is just getting on camera somehow. You don't have to start with some huge fancy setup. We've got a DSLR we use. We have multiple that we can set up. You don't have to have that. You can honestly start with the webcam on your computer. As long as you have good audio, starting with the webcam, and you just make sure you have the right lighting, you don't have to buy a bunch of tech to start with video. So yeah, that's where I would say make sure your audio is on point, and then you can start deciding on your video. Do you want to invest in a little bit of lighting to just use your webcam, or would you like to invest into the next levels? There's webcams that are only a couple $100. Then your DSLRs at, $1,000, $2,000, and then the big fancy cameras that are, multiple thousands that you can get when you're ready for it. So audio, make sure you have good lighting to use for your video, and then you can upgrade your camera after that.
You mentioned lighting. And for those tuning in on audio, this may be a challenging thing to describe, but for those of you tuning in on YouTube, what would be some kind of lighting for beginners? I am taking note of your lighting. Seems very professional. You have an accent light behind you. What is lighting for beginners look like? Yeah,
so really what you want to make sure is your face is illuminated. You don't want a bunch of shadows, especially on like a talking head, kind of like this. Now, if you're doing more cinematic, then the whole different story with shadows and things. But to start, you're doing a video podcast, you're talking to someone, you're going to want your face to be fairly illuminated. You might be able to see, if you are watching over on my left side, it's a little bit blue. There's a little bit blue to it. We actually have a LED bar light here, and you'll see on my hand as I get closer, just putting a little bit of color. And again, that's just cinematic effect. And you want to have a big thing with lighting is obviously no shadows on the face. So you want to have maybe a couple fill lights out at an angle in front of you, about maybe 30 degrees off to each side, just slightly above, your eye level coming in. So that's where you could start. So start with those fill lights, and then make sure that they're not too harsh, so that when you see those big photo lights that have the big white boxes, those diffusers on them. That diffuser helps spread the light out to make it softer and less harsh so it feels better. So you want to make sure you have at least some diffusers already on your lights. We have 2 Elgato key lights here in this studio. They're pretty non-expensive. They just go on stands. They come with their own diffuser. You can actually use an app to increase the brightness or the hue, because if you want warm light or if you want cooler light, depending on your situation, based on, the lighting around you, those are good ones to go. But you can start with those fill lights, so there's no shadow on your front, but just make sure they're not overbearing where they wash everything out. So start there. Again, not expensive, maybe couple hundred, I think. I can't remember for these. And then the next step you'd want to think about is the depth. So the more depth you can have in your video. So there's a gap between me and the wall behind me, a decent sized gap, probably 5 feet. If I could do more, that'd be good, but that worked for us. So that depth separates you from the background, allows the light to come on you, and then depending on your camera or settings, you can kind of have that little blurry background. Now, when you do this, if you're watching the video, if you're listening though, I have a lamp off to my right shoulder in the back, and that's called a hair light that comes and kind of just illuminates the back of the head and the shoulder a little bit. It separates me from my background. So again, that's another little tip. You can just use a lamp, and that's kind of the simplest. 2 fill lights in front of you, or even just 1 ring light if you have just one, just making sure you're illuminated, and then just separate yourself from the background, whether that be from a lamp or something like that.
That's incredible. David, I don't know about you, but I'm taking a bunch of mental notes. I've got some improvements to do over here.
I agree. I'm looking at all the shadows in my face from the light that I have directly above me. And so, that's really good tips. And the way you explained them, you don't need to be a Hollywood lighting guy to figure that out. Things that you may have at your house, like a lamp. Yeah. So, I really like that.
You can get crazy with it. You can get really cool with it. Like we have 2 Hue LED bars behind on the ground, kind of putting some color up just up the wall a little bit, just again to separate that background, give a little different essence. And we try to match it with this LED bar light over here that just puts a little bit of glow on the face. All are changeable, so you can change the colors to whatever you want. I mean, there's obviously the LED, rope lights or string lights that you could put under and around things. So there's a lot you can do. I mean, you can invest. We have, $1,800 cameras, $600 lights based on whatever your need is. But like a smaller, 10 by 8 section here that we're in doesn't need those big fill lights. Whereas if you're on a bigger, more open area, you'd want those bigger wattage lights.
Yeah, that's awesome. So for anybody listening, if you're driving, don't do this now, but when you get home, go to our YouTube channel. We'll have some clips up on our YouTube channel, but Chris is set up for podcasting studios. It's pretty sick. It's got all the accent lighting. And so, I would recommend anybody listening, go take a look at that and, get some tips. So I know I've got some notes here. And so I'm going to upgrade my setup. So Chris, one thing that you probably get this all the time, I know we get it a lot, is entrepreneurs that they have, everybody has fears, right? And so what do you tell people that when you're recommending video podcasting? And so maybe someone is comfortable with their voice, but maybe they're not comfortable being on video. And I know a lot of people that they're like, we've invited guests on the show before. They're like, no, I don't want to do video. And so what do you recommend to people that have that fear?
Yeah, first, obviously, where's that fear coming from? Why is that a fear for you? Obviously, that's got to be where we start, because you need to be on video, or at least someone. Maybe you have a partner within your business or brand that's less fearful of it. Someone needs to be, the face. You've got to have somebody on video. So I would say, figure out where that fear is coming. What's causing that? Is it just because you feel like people aren't going to like you or whatever it is? Figure that out. And then, just take it one step at a time and start I didn't like getting on camera. And still sometimes I'm like, getting on camera, especially if it's like just a phone thing and I'm doing something like a story or a video. I'm like, I don't know. I want to do it because I want to, share a message. I want to help and whatever it is. And so, it doesn't always go away. I did choir, I did drama in high school, and still getting on stage, you still get butterflies. You still get kind of that nervous, not anxiety, but nervous energy kind of excitement when you go up there. And so it's just being able to take those steps and walk that walk despite all of that. But it's definitely, with where we are in the world, in society, in social media, you got to get on video, or someone at least does, for your brand or business.
Absolutely.
So, question for you that relates to people that are thinking about starting a podcast. Ken and I have been in the podcast game since 2019, and we've talked to a lot of people with podcasts. And it seems that there's traditionally two routes or two motivations for people to go into podcasting. One is this is going to be fun, or there's a social cause, or there's a non-monetary benefit. And then there's a separate camp of people that get into it with the goal of producing an income. And so for that second group of people, can you maybe set expectations or talk about what is possible or what is realistic from an income producing standpoint?
As far as what's plausible, like what they could actually make on average kind of thing, is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
It's based on, a lot of things, your audience, your demographic, yourself. It's definitely doable to make money directly from your show. You've got to figure out what that looks like for you. We, a lot of our clients, we consult on how to make money indirectly through the show, using their show as that platform that sends their audience, to their product or service, and just adding a whole bunch of value within the show. But the show itself can directly make you money. And a lot of times people are thinking sponsorships. And, that's what they always hear about. How can I get sponsors? And that would be the last one I would say if you're trying to make money from your show. I would, again, start with just pushing your product and service, or at least directing people to that through your show to make more that way. But then as you grow and as you build an audience that, is consistently there, and you've, done hundreds and hundreds of episodes, and, you stuck with it to show like this is a good deal. And then you can start, there's different ways to do it, but you can start charging guests to be on the show. You can start having maybe those sponsors come to you, or if you've made those connections, those are all ways. Affiliates are a great way. And maybe you already use a service that you love, email CRM or something, and they have an affiliate program and you become an affiliate. You can just share, hey, this is what I use. I love it because it could help you in this. If you're interested, I'm an affiliate. Here's my link. More or less, you can make it and tailor it how you want. But affiliates is another good one to get kind of revenue coming in. But if you're thinking your podcast is going to make you really big buck, it's going to take a while, but it'll be better for you if you spend more of your energy using it as just a value loaded tool and lead magnet to direct people towards the thing you actually are selling or doing.
Got it. That makes sense.
Yeah.
And one point I want to highlight is that sponsorships is probably the lowest thing on your list. And I think that's something that people go into right out of the gate thinking about. I know when we started, that was something that we were thinking about right out of the gate, and have since pivoted to more of the affiliates and things like that. So
if you have a super, super, super niche show, like super specific, maybe it's a hyper local, like for your city or something specific like that, then that's a different ball game with sponsors. Because if you're a hyper local show, your show about Indianapolis, and even that might be too big. So if you're a show about just north of us, Carmel, Indiana, maybe it's just a show just about Carmel. Now you have the opportunity to say, hey, we have this show about Carmel. We have a decent following that live in Carmel, that want to know about Carmel, obviously, specifically Carmel, because that's what the show's about. Go to local businesses. Say, hey, look, this is what we have. Would you like to, be a sponsor for X amount of episodes or whatever it is? A hyper local or a super niched in show has more possibility to getting sponsors earlier than, a show like mine. It's just helping entrepreneurs grow. It's not as super hyper local or hyper niched as those can be. So that's something to think about too.
No, that's excellent. Next question I have is, and it's our job to bring out all the nuts and bolts. What are the best things that you have, right, when we interview people? And so, as David alluded to in the intro, you've built the Elevate Media podcast into a top 2% globally listened to show. To provide maximum value, what are, let's say, the top 3 things that people can focus on, to whether it's their brand, a podcast, anything, top 3 things to focus on that helped you grow?
The first one is being a little bit more specific on your message, what your episodes are about. You could be all over the place. And, I'm blessed that Elevate has grown like it has because we are a little bit more broad. We're talking about, elevating your brand, the stories of successful entrepreneurs, and in the episodes I share solo. And so that the first one would be know your message and know who you're talking to, those kind of together, because that'll help you keep on track and keep the episodes, relevant to those listening. And that's a big one. So knowing who and what you're talking about. The second would be consistency. It's funny, I've talked to a lot of podcasters who are like, hey, exact same question. How'd you get to top 2% globally? How'd you get charted? Things like that. Because we want to do the same thing. It's like, okay, well, how often are you releasing an episode? Oh, we're pretty consistent. I'm like, okay, what's consistent? And we do one a month. I'm like, okay. That's not going to work. I hate to tell you, like, if that's your cadence, it's going to be super, super slow growth. It's like if you're watching Netflix and you got a show comes out, right now, Secret Invasion's on Marvel on Disney Plus. What if an episode came out, one Wednesday and you got to wait a whole nother month before the next one in this? You're going to get bored. You're going to move on to something else. That's the same with your episodes. You need to at least be weekly. Once a week. And again, that comes from my mind frame of it being something more than just a hobby, something for fun that just kind of takes up time, because I have a purpose for the show, and I think most of your listeners would too. So you've got to treat it as part of, your business, main crucial piece. And so having that consistent weekly cadence is going to keep people, on board. I mean, okay, every week I get to hear, something that's going to be of value and help me move forward. So that consistency is crucial in that cadence, at least once a week. We do 3 a week now, but I started with 1 a week for the longest time. So just doing that and staying with it. You got to get over, and you got to do more than 7 episodes and think you're going to be Joe Rogan. You got to do way more episodes to have any success. That's just part of it. We're kind of up on 300 or over 300. I don't even know where we're at now, honestly, on numbers, but I just keep moving, keep that consistency. That's the second one. And then the third, always keep improving and be open to advice and feedback from your guests, from your listeners. So always be learning and innovating, because there's always something we can do better. I can do something better here. I can always improve that. I can improve my topics. I'm definitely still trying to improve on being a better speaker. And so there's always things we can do to grow and improve. And, feedback from guests are great. Hey, you ask a lot of questions, you talk too much, blah, blah, blah. Like anything, just take it with a grain of salt and take it as positive feedback so you can grow and improve. Same with your audience. Look at your reviews. If people are happy, or if they're not, they'll say it and say, okay, can I do something better to reach more people? So that would be the third, is, just continue to grow and innovate and keep moving forward.
That's excellent. And just to kind of recap, essentially, Chris, you mentioned fundamentals, right? Being open to constructive feedback and consistency, and have a simple message. What is this? What are you going to deliver in value, and what are you going to speak to? And so, excellent. One follow-up question is, you had mentioned you did 1 show for a while and now you're at 3. For anybody looking to grow, what was when you switched from 1, did you go from 1 to 2 or from 1 to 3? And what was the impact? Did it correlate to the amount of your downloads, your stats, your charting, and did it correlate to the amount of episodes that you generated?
From 1 straight to 3, because I got the point. It was actually just this year that I decided to do that with the show, because, I've been interviewing successful entrepreneurs every week, since 2019. I got to the point where it's like, okay, now we're building something. I've had success. I want to share what I've learned. I want to share, and show my expertise as well, because it's all part of the bigger business picture as well. But I was like, I have stories I can share, and get that out there and motivate and inspire, hopefully, and people can hear me, explain and teach and approach these different topics. And so that's one reason I wanted to do it. But went from 1 to 3, with Monday being the interviews we do, and then Wednesday and Friday I do a solo, or I release a solo each week. And it was also it was a stretch moment too. It was like, okay, we've been doing this for the podcast for 2 years, 3 years. What's next? How are we going to grow? How are we going to innovate? How are we going to improve? And that was the next step to push me kind of a little bit more out of my comfort zone of coming up with topics and getting topics to speak on and speaking solo for episodes. So that kind of was the reasoning behind it. As far as did we see any change? Funny enough, I don't really look at metrics a whole lot. My metrics just come obviously with the business side of things. So downloads, I think we could just continue to consistently grow. I have noticed weekly downloads have increased, and I've had a lot more people, I guess, reach out to be on the show, which has been a cool thing. That's one reason we started to charge when people reach out, because we've done a lot of work with the show. We do a lot to market it. We've built the network, the audience. And so a lot of people want to push their thing or whatnot anyways. So we do a small thing, and it's been going well with that. But it's just been, just consistent growth. And that's what a lot of people need to look at. They want to see their numbers jump, and have thousands per week or per episode right away. And it takes time. I think the last time I looked, the average download per episode was 75. It's nothing crazy. We just all see those outliers of Joe Rogan and things like that, and all these celebrities who've already done the work to build a huge audience. They put out a show and they're going to get those numbers. So you got to think about that too. Don't worry much about that. As long as you're continually growing, speaking to your audience, speaking to what they need, and you're having consistent growth, things will happen. So
as we sit here talking in 2023, for those of our listeners that may already have a podcast and they've got the fundamentals down, right? They have good audio, they're consistently posting, maybe they have a YouTube presence with video, but they've seen their downloads kind of plateau. What are some strategies or tactics to continue to build that audience?
You'd ask them, what are they doing right now to connect with their audience? What are they doing to advertise the show? Are they just posting it once a week? Same thing. Like, are they posting on social media once a week? That's not enough anymore. Some people say, oh, hey, you just need to post once or twice a week. It's okay. You got to post once a day. And that might seem daunting to some, but you got to think, who else is in your market? How can you set yourself apart? So showing up more and leading people to the show more. Don't be scared to say, hey, go check out the show. The most of my posts at the end, hey, this was from the Elevate Media Podcast, or go check out this topic on the Elevate Media Podcast. And, I'm just big about pushing it out there and letting people know about it. That would be one way. Just make sure you're getting it out there more in front of people. The second way is get on other people's shows. Share your value, share that topic to other audiences that have been built, and share your knowledge, share your story, share your excitement, share whatever it is to a show that has a similar audience. It doesn't be the exact same thing. There's going to be people who say, that sounds like a great show. I might be able to learn something from that. And then they're going to go to subscribe and listen to some. So that's a second big way, organically without necessarily having to pay anything. And then, of course, there's ads if you want to look into those.
Before we get into the fire round, I wanted to ask Chris, are there any other messages or anything else that we didn't cover that you think could be helpful to the audience?
I think, don't get discouraged. I think that's a big one on entrepreneurship, podcasting. Just don't get discouraged. Play the long game. If you can play the long game, and that's the most important thing. These short-term hopes and dreams, instant gratification type stuff like that, you're just not going to make it if you can't play the long game. So that'd be one thing I just remind people. Don't focus on the downloads as much. Don't even focus on the charts and stuff as much. Just focus on adding value, connecting with an audience, and just keeping things streamlined and simple as possible.
Excellent advice. Yeah. One thing that David and I have done is kind of tried to create the podcasting experience where we enjoy it. And so it's like a passion project for us. And it's not like, hey, we're chasing this and chasing that. So I think that advice is excellent. Okay. So Chris, we run all of our guests through the ringer, and it's called the fire round. Are you ready?
I think so.
What is your favorite book?
Lord of the Rings.
Awesome. What are your hobbies?
Don't necessarily have any specific hobbies. I love to travel, love being outside around animals. We have a mini farm, and then working out.
Okay. Excellent. In the random marathon, right?
Yeah.
What is one thing that you do not miss about working for the man?
I do not miss having someone tell me what my time is worth, where my time can go, and how much money I can make.
Absolutely. Last one. What do you think sets apart successful entrepreneurs from those who give up, fail, or never get started?
I think it's the fortitude to endure. I think having the courage to battle through all the ups and downs of entrepreneurship. I think for those who have started, that's a big one. If they can have the fortitude to endure, they can do anything, because entrepreneurship, it is a marathon. It's climbing a mountain and then going down the valleys, and it's everything. If you haven't started it, if you're thinking about starting a business, an entrepreneurship journey, get ready, because it's going to test you. It's going to stretch you. It's going to beat you down. And a lot, it sounds terrible, and it is sometimes. It's hard. You can make it simple, which is good, but it will be hard. It's not going to be easy. And it's funny, I just talked to a friend of mine the other day. We were talking about it, and, hey, how's life? How's business? And I told him, I said, it feels like I'm going through a refinery right now. I've been doing this since, 2019, 2021 with Elevate, and right now I feel like I'm in another really, really refinery type era. I just feel like I'm getting smelted down, beat, molded, shaped, and just, going through this process again, which all of it sounds terrible, but it's all for good. So I'm leaving parts of me that I don't need anymore, habits that I don't need anymore. I'm going through this process, but within that, it's uncomfortable. It's painful. It hurts. But on the other side, coming out, tools, swords, a lot of things only are made going through this refinery. And so you're going to go from, a solid object, a solid, state of matter to be created into something even more beneficial and more deadly or strong going through this refinery period. So you've got to be able to have the fortitude to endure all of the challenges that are going to come your way.
That's an excellent analogy, and I really like it.
So for our listeners, if they're interested in working with Elevate Media, what would be the best way to get in touch with you?
Yeah, you can either email us at support@elevate-media-group.com, or you can just reach out to me on Instagram at chris.t.anderson. I still personally respond to messages there, so you'll be getting me. You won't be getting a bot or AI or an assistant or anything like that. I still, go and answer those messages. And I'm open to answer any questions too. I love that. So if you have any entrepreneurship questions, video podcast questions, anything, shoot them over to me. I just love helping and giving, where I can. So those would be the best places.
Awesome. Well, we will post links to that in the show notes. Chris, want to thank you for being a guest on the Firing the Man podcast and looking forward to staying in touch.
Hey, thank you both for having me. I appreciate it.
Before you go, we wanted to share a new service that Ken and I have been using called Getita that has made us over $10,000 in Amazon reimbursements. The service requires no monthly subscription, and Getita collects a small percentage of the money they recover for you. It takes less than 5 minutes to set up and works on all Amazon marketplaces. Go to Getita.com, Getida.com, and enter promo code FTM400. That's FTM for Firing the Man 400 to get your first $400 in reimbursements commission free. How much money does Amazon owe you?